You are 26 years old, sitting inside a gray cubicle that smells like burnt coffee. The spreadsheet on your screen is not even yours. Your manager walks past, doesn't look at you. Nobody does. Then your phone vibrates. One email. You read the subject line. Then read it again. The tiny software company you bought 3 months ago just signed its largest customer. Monthly recurring revenue nearly doubled. You refresh the dashboard. Again, and suddenly the little business you bought for $38,000 could realistically be worth more than $100,000 if the growth holds. Your hands go cold. Not because you suddenly became rich. You didn't. Because something you built quietly is alive. You close the email. Your coworker asks, "You good?" You look at him. Yeah, just tired. Then you go back to a spreadsheet that suddenly feels like it belongs to somebody else's life. Nobody around you knows that 11 months ago you started building a second one. 11 months earlier it started with about $600. LLC filing, registered agent, domain, business email, basic accounting software. Nothing impressive. The company owned nothing, made nothing. It was basically paperwork with a bank account. You gave it a boring name on purpose. Meridian Holdings. You did not want a cool startup name. You did not want a logo people remembered. You wanted a box capable of owning things. And in the United States, an LLC really can exist as a legal entity separate from its owner. In Delaware, for example, the public certificate of formation generally requires the LLC's name, registered office, and registered agent, not automatically a public list of all members. But privacy from a casual public search is not the same as legal invisibility. That distinction becomes important later. At the beginning, you don't understand any of it. You just know you want to buy something small, not build the next Facebook, not raise venture capital. Buy something already making money. You find a tired e-commerce business. The owner wants out. Traffic is decent. Checkout is terrible. Email marketing basically does not exist. You use $8,500 you save from work and negotiate the rest through a short seller finance payment schedule. For the next 4 months, you work on it after your real job, checkout flow, email recovery, product pages, supplier costs, nothing revolutionary. You simply fix things that were already obviously broken. The business starts making money. You sell it for $28,000, not $1 million exit, $28,000. But when the wire lands, something changes inside your head. Because your salary taught you one equation, hours create money. That business just taught you another. An asset can become more valuable because you improve the asset. You write your first rule, do not spend the win. The second acquisition, you take almost everything and buy another small business. A niche directory website, ugly, profitable, ignored by its owner. You improve the pricing. Automate parts of customer onboarding, add annual plans, improve search traffic, revenue rises, then you buy another tiny online business, then another. By month 7, Meridian owns 4 small assets. Combined, maybe they are worth around $180,000. Not life-changing money yet, but enough that you stop thinking of this as a side hustle. It is becoming a portfolio. And you become obsessed with one idea? Stay quiet. No screenshots. No LinkedIn post saying excited to announce. No video beside a rented Lamborghini explaining entrepreneurship. Your friends think you are working too much. Your parents think you are saving for a house. Your girlfriend knows you have some side projects. Nobody knows the full picture. Then you learn something uncomfortable. Public discretion is possible. Complete invisibility is not. Domestic U.S. companies are currently exempt from the Federal Corporate Transparency Act's BOI filing requirement after FinCEN's 2025 rule change. But that does not mean you can create companies and become unknown to the financial system. When you apply for a name, the IRS generally requires a real responsible party, the person who ultimately owns, controls, or effectively manages the entity. The IRS explicitly says nominees should not be used in place of the actual responsible party. Banks have their own customer due diligence obligations too. FinCEN's current rules generally require covered financial institutions to identify and verify beneficial owners of legal entity customers, with 2026 relief allowing them to avoid repeating that process every single time an existing legal entity customer opens another account in certain circumstances. So, you update the rule, not never be known. Instead, never be unnecessarily visible. Ears, they know what they legally need to know. Bank, same attorney, same accountant, definitely the entire internet? No, that difference becomes your real privacy strategy. The first serious deal then comes the software company, small logistics tool, old interface, stable customers, founder exhausted, price $38,000. This is more money than you have ever put into one decision. You spent 3 nights trying to talk yourself out of it. Then you buy it. You rebuild onboarding, raise pricing for new customers, improve cancellation flows, talk to customers instead of guessing what they want. 3 months later, recurring revenue is almost double what it was when you bought it. That is the email that hits while you were sitting inside the cubicle. The opening scene. And now you have a problem. The side business is becoming more valuable than the career, but your paycheck is still funding your life. So you do not quit immediately. That is another rule. Never force the asset to feed you before the asset is ready. You keep showing up. Another 5 months. The portfolio grows. Cash reserves build. Eventually, your businesses produce enough that losing the salary would no longer threaten the machine. Then, on an ordinary Monday, you give 2 weeks' notice. No dramatic speech. Your manager says, "Where are you going?" You tell him, "I'm going to try consulting for a while." Technically true. Just incomplete. The first million without the job, things move faster, not magically. You simply get 50 hours a week back. You buy a subscription tool for $90,000. You do not buy it with a credit card. You do not max your personal credit chasing an acquisition. You use accumulated business cash, negotiate seller financing, and keep reserves. Because by now you understand something people learn too late, and approval is not evidence that a deal is affordable. Credit is a tool, not permission. You keep personal and business obligations organized. You protect payment history. You review your credit before financing decisions instead of after getting denied. The same principle Marcus talks about constantly applies here too. Do not chase approvals. Prepare for approvals. 6 months later, Meridian owns 6 operating businesses. The combined businesses may be worth around $1.3 million based on their actual cash flow and what similar businesses might sell for. And for the first time, you see 7 figures on a valuation spreadsheet. You do not have $1.3 million in checking. That is another lesson. Enterprise value is not cash. A company can be worth $1 million, while you personally cannot spend anything close to $1 million tomorrow. Businesses have expenses, taxes, debt, employees, working capital, and values can fall just as quickly as they rise. So you do not buy the Porsche. Your car is 6 years old. It works. You keep driving it. Your friends assume the consulting business is going okay. You let them. Then privacy starts costing you at first. Secrecy felt powerful. Now it starts feeling heavy. Your girlfriend asks, "How is work really going?" You say, "Pretty good." Pretty good? You spent the morning negotiating a $240,000 acquisition, but you cannot explain that without explaining everything. At dinner with your parents, your father asks, "Are you saving anything?" You almost laugh. Instead, "Yeah, I'm doing okay." You realize every relationship now contains two versions of you, the person they know and the person making decisions they know nothing about. The businesses are compounding, so is the distance, and that is the hidden cost nobody puts on the balance sheet. The offer around month 22, another operator notices the logistics company. They make an offer, $1.4 million for one company. You bought it for $38,000. You stare at the number for 20 minutes. Then you do something the 26-year-old in the cubicle never would have understood. You say no, not because $1.4 million is small, because you know why they want it. Recurring revenue is growing. Customers are sticky. The business is becoming strategically valuable. So instead, you negotiate a licensing partnership, large upfront payment, ongoing royalties. You keep ownership. They get access to technology. Nobody at the buyer cares whether you were 28 or 58. They care about the economics. This is the first time you understand what leverage really feels like. Not debt leverage, position leverage. You own something another person needs. The conversation is different. Year 3, by the third year, Meridian owns 9 businesses, not 19. Not some fantasy $480 million empire created from $600 in 2 years. 9, some perform beautifully, 2 disappoint you. 1 almost fails, you sell another. Combined enterprise value sits somewhere around $7 million to $9 million, depending on how a buyer values the portfolio. Your actual liquid wealth is much smaller. That matters. You have employees now, an accountant, outside counsel, operators running individual companies, systems, payroll, taxes, real responsibilities. The empire starts running without you touching every decision. And this is exactly what you wanted, except something unexpected happened. The less the companies need you, the more obvious it becomes that you do not know what your life is supposed to need. For years you told yourself, one more acquisition, 1 more million, 1 more layer of privacy. Then I'll relax. But there is always another deal, another risk, another contract, another thing that could go wrong. You built freedom and accidentally turned maintaining it into another job. The exit, then the email arrives. Private equity group. They have watched several companies in your portfolio. They want the whole structure, not every asset. The operating portfolio. Initial offer, $6.8 million. Part cash. Part contingent consideration tied to performance after closing. This time, you do not negotiate from your bedroom at 2:00 a.m. Lawyers review the documents. Accountants review the numbers. The buyer performs due diligence. Your identity is not plastered across social media. But the actual transaction professionals know who owns what. That is what legitimate privacy looks like. Discreet, not fake. You negotiate. Final value moves higher. Then one Tuesday morning, you sign. Money moves. You sit there staring at the confirmation. 3 years earlier, you were refreshing someone else's spreadsheet inside a cubicle. Now you have completed an exit worth more than you once imagined earning in decades. And the strangest part? You feel almost nothing for the first 5 minutes. Then relief. Then exhaustion. Then something closer to grief. You think about the dinners where you deliberately made yourself smaller. The relationships you kept at arm's length, the birthdays you answered emails through, the girlfriend who eventually stopped asking what was wrong because your answer was always work. The businesses produced value, the secrecy protected your privacy, but every strategy has a cost, and privacy taken too far starts looking exactly like isolation. The real rule you used to think the first rule was, never be visible. You were wrong. The real rule is, choose who gets access. The government gets what the law requires. Your bank gets what financial rules require. Your accountant gets what they need to protect you. Your attorney knows enough to keep the structure clean. The public gets almost nothing. But the people you love? Maybe building a real life eventually requires letting somebody see behind the holding company. Because being underestimated can absolutely be powerful. Not needing public validation can be powerful. Building quietly can be powerful. But becoming completely unknowable is not power. It is loneliness with excellent paperwork. You started with $600 worth of structure, a few $1,000s of savings, one ugly little online business. 3 years later, people see the exit. They call it overnight success. They never saw the bad acquisitions, the contracts, the cash reserves, the credit decisions, the mornings before sunrise, the businesses that almost failed, the attorney bills, the deals you rejected, the years you refused to make your lifestyle a receipt for your progress. That is why success eventually looks mysterious from the outside. People see the transaction, they do not see the system. And sitting there after the exit, you finally understand what the fortune actually was. Not anonymity, not the LLC, not the money. It was the ability to build without needing everybody to watch. And the wisdom to eventually understand that the people who actually matter should not have to live outside the walls forever. Because privacy protects wealth, but trust is what eventually makes the wealth worth having. Inspired by the structure and psychological arc of the reference script.